When it comes to the transfer portal, Oregon's had a great offseason, and they're not done. At least they don't want to be. Here we go.
You are Locked On Ducks, your daily podcast on the Oregon Ducks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, it is that time once again for Locked On Ducks. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with the Ducks. If you have not already, like, comment, and subscribe, rate, review, please, and thank you wherever you listen to or watch this show, which today is brought to you by LinkedIn. These days, every new potential hire can feel like a high-stakes wager for your small business. That's why LinkedIn Jobs helps find the right people for your team faster and for free. Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. Transfer portal, Jericho Johnson, and a smattering, I think is the word, of other items coming up on today's show. But we start with Keon Sabb, who is the name that you need to know if you were an Oregon fan, because the Ducks are absolutely, according to reports, going after the Michigan safety. Now, when Jim Harbaugh left Michigan to go to the NFL, a 30-day window appeared. That 30-day window allowed Michigan players to enter the transfer portal. Now, an important distinction here, because I get this question quite often. Hey, how can so-and-so come out of the transfer portal right now? I thought it closed. I thought you couldn't do this. The exceptions go like this. You can enter the transfer portal within a 30-day window of your head coach leaving your program, or program if you prefer. Though Oregon's coach, obviously, has not left the program and doesn't plan to anytime soon. And you can come out of the transfer portal at any time. So you can go in during certain times, or if you've got an exemption, or if you're a graduate transfer, but you can come out of it any time. So this could absolutely work logistically. And if Oregon were to land Keon Sabb, he would be, with the Ducks in time for spring football. He is among the top transfer portal players available right now. I believe 24/7 Sports has got him as the top transfer portal player that's still available. He has, according to reports, not my reporting, been contacted by Oregon, Georgia, Auburn, Ole Miss, Syracuse. There could be others. 24/7's got an article about him that mentions Alabama, Texas A&M, Oklahoma, Rutgers, and Penn State as potential options there. Now, he has actually had Oregon on his radar before. He was a class of 2022 recruit. Oregon recruited him when Mario and company were still at the helm. And then, of course, Lanning took over to finish up that 2022 class that really, most notably included Josh Connerly, who's going into his second year starting as Oregon's left tackle, of course. But Lanning recruited Keon Sabb while he was the defensive coordinator at Georgia. So the question then becomes, is this someone that Oregon should be after? And the answer is absolutely yes. But this is the only player. I got to credit Sharon Moore in Michigan, our Big Ten foe. Doesn't sound right, does it? That's because it's not, but it's reality now. He's done a great job of keeping players around, because when your coach goes into the transfer portal, you expect a lot of guys to leave. You expect a lot of guys to go. That just hasn't been the case. But Keon Sabb is in the transfer portal. Sabb, S-A-B-B, is the way that he spells his name. This is someone Oregon should absolutely go after, because he was starting on what was absolutely the best defense in all of college football this year. Georgia may have had a case, but Michigan's defense, well, it was better than Oregon's. We know that. We saw what Oregon's defense, which was very good this past season, did twice against Washington. We saw what Michigan's did. Was Keon Sabb everything to that Michigan defense along those lines? No, of course not. But this is somebody who is going to be highly coveted for a reason, who's had big-time programs across the country go after him for a reason. He was a former four-star recruit. He was on the team this year. He had a very productive season, and he's someone that makes an impact on the back end. And this can absolutely fit Oregon, because the cornerbacks, as in defensive backs, not quarter, but the quarterbacks, it applies there as well, have got tremendous depth, right? You've got Jalil Florence, who's not going to be involved in spring football while he recovers from an injury. Let's assume he comes back. But you have Cam Alexander coming in. You have Jabbar Muhammad coming in. You've got Nico Reed still there. You got Brandon Johnson. You've got Kobe Savage. There are now Savages in the safeties group, of course, but at the cornerback position, Sione Laulea, the number one JUCO player, That's a group that's got a lot of bodies. Safety, less so. Safety is a position group that for a couple of weeks I've talked about here on the show going into spring football as a group that potentially could have either a redshirt freshman or true freshman playing next year, whether that's Tyler Turner, Cody DeCambra, or Aaron Flowers. The first two would be redshirts. The last guy, Flowers, would be a true freshman in there. They could see time, or maybe they move somebody positionally. You know, Brian Smith was on here talking about Sione Laulea, saying, well, maybe he could move back to safety, or Roderick Pleasant kind of has a free safety build. Maybe they like Dalen Austin to go back there, or one of the other DBs in the room. There are a lot of guys, but a transfer could absolutely work. And this is a guy who is not going to go somewhere where he won't start. I think he would start for Oregon. I think he would start for Oregon. At what specific position? I think he would take Tysheem Johnson's spot. I think Tysheem would rotate at the nickel position with Brandon Johnson, the transfer from Duke, and maybe rotating as well, you know, going over the top when Sabb wouldn't be on the field. But I think he would be the other starting safety alongside Kobe Savage from Kansas State. So I think this move could absolutely work. And yeah, if you can get him, you do that if you're Oregon. You don't think about, you know, as bad as it can feel, and I definitely feel this way for those who are in this particular camp of, well, do young freshmen just never get a chance? Do they not get an opportunity? What about the development and that sort of stuff? I completely hear you. Completely feel what you're feeling in that particular realm. Oregon is a program, as I've talked about before, that is all in every year. And if you can bring in a guy that makes you better, yes, you forego the development and allow the possibility for a potential transfer departure from a talented high school recruit who hasn't seen the field in a big way yet, and you avoid the growing pains, and you take a guy who has already been on the field, proven himself as a part of an elite defense at the Power 5 level last year, at the national championship level last year. It doesn't get that much better. So he's had great coaching. He was a highly touted recruit. He's been productive in his career. If you can bring in somebody like that, yeah, Oregon should go get him. And, you know, it doesn't mean, you know, if a guy like Sabb comes in, that you just stop recruiting high school kids at a particular position group, because there's an element of randomness to all of this. You don't always know what position groups are going to have a lot of transfers available, or the right transfers available. And it's why when we talk about recruiting, yeah, it still matters to have depth and have talent and have options and guys who can push for playing time or maybe one day become starters. Even if fewer high school recruits are going to end up being starters than they used to, which I think is certainly the case for Oregon as you look at their recruiting cycles, because the transfer portal classes used to have, you know, sometimes like one or two players in it. That's just not the case anymore. I mean, Eric Scopel was on the show on Friday, and we talked about, you know, a piece that he wrote over at Duck Territory that you've probably got 8 starters that have come in from the transfer portal. Those are 8 positions that just 4 or 5 years ago would have been taken by the next wave of high school recruits. It's not like that anymore. I mean, if you're good enough as a former high school recruit to Oregon, you're going to see the field, but that can be a difficult proposition when you've got veteran transfers available. So that's just kind of the dynamic of where things are at. There's no guarantee Oregon's going to get him, of course, but this is certainly an option that Oregon should pursue. Keon Sabb, the number one player in the transfer portal according to 24/7 Sports, that's still available. I think Oregon should go after him, and if they can get the former Michigan DB, they could bolster their secondary even more. Jericho Johnson quite literally bolsters in size the defensive line for Oregon. I'm going to talk about everything you should know about another recruit in the Ducks 2024 cycle, that being Jericho Johnson, of course, after we talk about LinkedIn Jobs, because when you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you have to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just another job board. LinkedIn is a vast network of more than 1 billion professionals. That's billion with a B, which makes it the best place to hire, gives you access to professionals you can't find anywhere else. LinkedIn does all that while making the process easy and intuitive. Hiring is easy when you have that many quality candidates. So easy, in fact, that 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Go post your job for free over there at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. 2.5 million small businesses are already over there. You should be too for hiring. LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege. That's LinkedIn.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply. Thankfully, the only terms and conditions to a second segment sip here on the show are that I use them every day, and it helps me give you the best product possible. Thanks for being tuned in, by the way. So, my goal here throughout the course of this time in which we don't have Oregon football games. The spring game, though, is just over 2 months away. That's not very far. That's not very far. It'll be here before you know it, folks, and we'll have plenty to talk about when that time does arrive. But my mission is to go through each and every 2024 high school recruit for the Ducks and give you everything that you need to know, including my own assessments, which I presume you take somewhat into account if you listen to the show, especially if you're an everydayer out there. Thank you for doing that. Let's talk about Jericho Johnson. This is a big-time recruit, literally big-time recruit. 6'2", 366 pounds along the defensive line. You talk about beefing up the front. It doesn't get that much beefier than 6'2", 366. Four-star recruit from Fairfield, California. He went to, I think it's pronounced Armijo High School, Armijo. If it's Spanish, it'd be Armijo. So we'll go with that. In Fairfield, California. Top 25 defensive linemen in the 2024 class. According to 24/7 Sports, this is not the composite, but just the 24/7 Sports rankings. They're usually similar, but not always in perfect lockstep there. He's the 6th highest rated recruit in Oregon's 2024 class, which has got 27 total commits in the cycle, which is quite a few. And you know what Oregon avoided this cycle? Having a lot of flips, having a big-time guy they were after that was committed to Oregon going elsewhere. In 2023, that name was, of course, Dante Moore. And in 2022, you had guys flip because Mario Cristobal left and Dan Lanning and the new staff came in and whatnot. But it was very steady, I'd say. There were recruiting battles that Oregon missed out on. Guys like Justin Williams, the 5-star linebacker that ended up going to Georgia, though I like Oregon's linebacker haul in this class quite a bit. But I like their defensive line haul as well. And that's just a consistent theme with this staff. Dan Lanning, Tosh Lupoy, they make it a priority. And Lupoy is a master defensive line recruiter. He is as good as anybody in the country recruiting that position. He's the co-DC and he's the defensive line coach. And there is a reason. This is the position group that he recruits exceptionally well. He is a premier recruiter. So Johnson chose the Ducks over Utah, Washington, and Bama, amongst others. That was kind of the final grouping in there. When I watch him on film, first of all, the size stands out. Like he looks somewhat, frankly, he looks on film like he could be even bigger than 366 pounds, which for all we know, he might be with the lineup of highlights that I was checking out for him. But this is a guy who just brings that sort of size and at the same time is ready, but not fully ready to contribute for the Ducks. And I'll get to that in just a little bit. But I think he's got good hands. When I think good hands along the defensive line, I think Brandon Dorless. He's a much different player than Brandon Dorless. That is not who my comparison is going to be, which is what I always do at the end of these particular segments. But he's got good hands. He uses that to get around guys on the interior. He's quicker than you would think for somebody of that size. I don't think speed is necessarily a plus attribute for him, and I don't think once he goes against college offensive linemen, he's going to be using that extensively to create havoc plays or to make an impact. I think, and by the way, if you look up some of his highlight reels and huddle highlights or whatever, you see him sometime playing at defensive end. I'm not a scout, but I've watched a bit of football in my day. There is a 0% chance that he ever lines up at defensive end for the Oregon Ducks, which is where Jordan Birch plays, right? You got the defensive end on one side, and you've got that, kind of jack or joker position, whatever you want to call it, the edge position player at the other, right? The Blake Purchase, Mateo Uyunglele, Tatum Tuioti, Amarion Winston sort of group, right? A little bit leaner, sometimes a little bit taller, and typically have a little bit more speed. The defensive end, guy like Jordan Birch or Brandon Dorless played this spot as well over the last couple of years. You're going to have a power component and try to be a little bit more balanced in the way that you attack offensive tackles. Jericho Johnson is not going to play against college tackles. He would. It's not where he would fit. Where he does fit and where I think he can be most effective is swallowing up double teams. So there are a couple of plays on his film that stand out in which he's double teamed and he just stands them up. He doesn't actually make a play, but two linemen come to block him and he just stands up and they can't move him because he's too big and he's too strong. And I think that's where he kind of thrives. He has that typical size to, be what you would describe as a nose tackle, someone that goes over the center or the guard or in between the center and the guard and just takes up space. Just be a people mover. Might not be a big stats guy. He's somebody that plays a position that isn't prone to put up big stats anyway. But I think he could have a really impactful career with the Ducks if he realizes his full potential. And he doesn't have to put up crazy numbers to do so. Because as defensive tackle, it's hard to rack up stats. It's hard to rack up tackles because you're often getting double teamed, and your job is to create some space and create lanes for linebackers to come up, like Jeffrey Bossa and Justin Jacobs and Devin Jackson and the like, for guys to come up and be able to make the play. Your job is to not get moved off the ball. I think the biggest area of improvement for him is going to be learning to play against guys his own size. Now, are there a lot of linemen that are 366 pounds? No. But one thing that you watched on his film is certainly he is taller and bigger than the guys he's going up against, which is not uncommon. It's not like he's the first guy to experience this, but the last guy that stood out like this to me on film with, there's going to be an adjustment period as you go play college football was Khalil Ware, who didn't end up working out the way that he was capable of with the Ducks, but he was a 5-star, 7-foot center, and you watch his highlight reel, and he's got all these skills, and he's 7 feet tall. He's playing against high school basketball in Little Rock, Arkansas. It's not exactly the Southern California circuit down there, and so I thought there would be an adjustment there. There'll definitely be an adjustment for him there. This is the breakdown from Greg Biggins, the 24/7 sports analyst. He said, quote, Johnson is a massive is right, interior defensive lineman who looks like an ideal nose guard or traditional tackle in a 4-3. This can work in a 4-2-5, which is the scheme that Oregon runs. I'll get to that in a sec. He's a space eater who can take on blocks and still get a push. Naturally strong kid who's more of a run stuffer right now, but has shown some pass rush ability over the last 2 seasons. Showed up at the All-American Bowl at 360 pounds, but moves well for his size and shows some nice short area quickness. Would love to see him play it closer to 340 or so to improve his initial get off and burst. Plays with a motor and took 2-way snaps at Armijo and didn't look fatigued. Has a chance to get in the 2 deep as a true freshman in college because of his size, strength, and physicality, and his upside is a high-round NFL draft pick. I do not see him getting significant snaps in 2024. This is not the only Oregon 4-star defensive lineman on the roster. Now, he is very big, and so that makes him a potential candidate. But there are other guys who slate to play on the interior from the 2023 cycle who have had a year in the weight room, who have had a year with this coaching staff. I don't see Johnson being a big rotation guy. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe his size is too much to overlook and they want a true nose tackle to fit in there. I don't see him being someone that cracks the rotation in a significant way in year 1 because, as Biggins points out, he needs to slim down. He needs to be a little bit more agile. He'll still be able to eat up a bunch of space, but I think that he is an intriguing prospect because of his size, but I also think it makes him a little bit raw. And like I said, there's going to be a bit of an adjustment when he's going against college offensive linemen who are also 300 plus pounds Because in high school, when you look at the guys he's going up against, there might be a couple 300-pounders around there, but mostly it looked like guys who are in the 250 to 280 range that were trying to block him, and they just can't. They can't move him. He's too big, too strong. So my comparison for him that was just clear as day watching the film on him is Jordan Scott. Jordan Scott was just a people mover, space eater, run stuffer, didn't do much in the passing game. That's what I see. That's what I see here with Jericho Johnson. I think that's what he can be at his best, but I don't know that he'll do that in year one. If memory serves, Jordan Scott did play at least a little bit as a true freshman. I didn't look into that coming into the show, so I apologize. But I think that Scott was, somebody that really came to be a key piece on the defensive line and played in a 4-2-5 scheme, was effective in doing so. I think that's what Johnson is capable of being. So let me know your thoughts in the YouTube comments, or hit me up on X, formerly known as Twitter, at @SMcLaughlinCFB or at Locked On Ducks. DMs and mentions always wide open. We got a couple different things to talk about to wrap up today's show. One of those things is FanDuel. Duh. Obviously, you can get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Doesn't matter what it is. Just $5 down, $150 in bonus bets. That's a pretty sweet deal. You can bet against the Blazers. They're not very good. You can bet against the Pistons. They're even worse somehow. You can bet against the Spurs. They might be the worst among the three, despite having Victor Wembanyama. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, all that and more, including Oregon's win total, tied for the highest in all of college football at 10.5. You like the over? Hammer it. You like the under? Hammer that too. Whatever you like, visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, let's start with hoops before we get to men's basketball. On the women's side, it's just a struggle. No reason to dive into it there. Who watched the men's game on Saturday? Oh, man. If you didn't, Oregon won. That's the good news, okay? Let's start with good news, because there's so much more bad news to take away from a win. That's just what Oregon is right now. You gotta just focus on the positive. They've got the Bay Area schools this week. I don't feel great about their chances to go 2-0. Because both Stanford and Cal are better teams than Oregon State. Cal is playing some good basketball right now. Mark Madsen was in the league that I do play-by-play for in the Western Athletic Conference. He was at Utah Valley. That guy is a darn good basketball coach, and he's doing a heck of a job with Cal men's basketball, and they are on an upward trajectory. So I would bet, if I were going to, that Oregon goes 1-1 this week. Why? Because they were on the road against Oregon State in their only game last week. The Ducks are up 12.5. So I get out of the Southern Utah game and I look at the score and I see up 12. I'm like, oh, great. So I tune into the radio call, driving back home, and I get out and I put the game on TV and I'm watching, and things are going well. We're not hitting threes, but Oregon State isn't hitting threes. And so, well, if they're not going to hit threes when Oregon's broke, this is a Dana Altman special. Low-scoring affair. Second straight game, by the way. Oregon has held a team under 70 points, under 65 points, as a matter of fact. I don't hate seeing that. If you're looking for reasons to be optimistic, the defense is starting to round into shape. The offense had a bad day. And Volley Dante led the way with 22 points, including the game-winning dunk, which I'll get to in a moment. But this game showcased, it was a great encapsulation of why this Oregon team can be so frustrating to watch and root for. And that's because they were up 12 at the half. They kept Oregon State at bay for almost the entire second half. Beavs tried to make a run, they'd get a stop. Beavs start to do that, they'd hit a shot, they'd get a bucket. And so they're up 9 or so. They're up 9 or 10 with less than 4 minutes to go. And Oregon State came back to tie the game with less than a minute to go. Oregon just stood around offensively. They'd beat the press. They'd have 3-on-2. The announcers did a great job of highlighting this. It was Roxy Bernstein, and I don't remember who else was on the call on Pac-12 Network, but They were talking about how, Oregon would beat the Oregon State trap. They'd have 3-on-2, and then they'd stop and let Oregon State set up into their zone. Oregon apparently doesn't run a zone offense that includes having somebody at the high post, which is, look, I'm not a basketball coach. I'm just saying that's how I learned zone offense is you run a high-low, baseline, high post, wing, guy up top, move the ball, find shots, set screens, overload aside, and whatnot. Oregon was very lost against the zone. Not so much lost as lost implies that you are looking for something else. I didn't think they were looking for something else. They were trying to just dribble out the clock. And it wasn't working, but they kept trying it, and they kept doing it over and over and over again. And eventually, through mistakes and sloppy play and bad offense, Oregon State ties the game with 2 free throws with less than a minute to go. And I'm watching this after Oregon had a double-digit lead for most of the second half, thinking to myself, oh my goodness, is this going to be another big lead collapse in Corvallis? I've seen one too many of those in the last 2 years. It was only one, but guess what? That was one too many. And so Oregon comes down, and Shellstad had the hot hand, relative to the rest of the guards, and so he tried to get him a shot. Wasn't a particularly well-designed play. He can't get free. He defers to Couisnard, who gets an okay look, contested off-balance floater. And N'Faly Dante saves the game. That same N'Faly Dante I was talking about last week, this is when he's at his best. You don't run the offense through him. You just let him go to work because he's bigger, stronger, and more athletic than everybody else that is trying to guard him. And guess what? He created not one, but 2 offensive rebounds to end this game. Ball finds his way to Couisnard, top of the key with 4 seconds, drives, wraparound pass. Dante throws it down, 0.7 of a second. Oregon gets out with a 60-58 win. I'm glad they won. Oregon is 17-8. They're 9-5 in conference play. Getting into the top 4 in Las Vegas would be important if they were going to make a run to get the automatic qualifier. This was a game that Oregon won on the road, which is a good thing. They didn't shoot it well from 3. That's, again, a good thing. That they didn't have their best offensive day, and they're able to win a rivalry game on the road. Not easy to win on the road. Arizona went into that building and lost. It's not an easy place to win. They had some magic because their women's basketball team had a big had a big win at the buzzer earlier in the week, so they thought they were doing that again, and Oregon just snatched it away from him. That's great. But the passiveness of Oregon down the stretch in that game was infuriating. I mean, I understand wanting to use clock, but do you know what's better than using clock when you've got a lead late in a game? Making the lead so big that the other team just doesn't have enough time to come back. And the offense down the stretch was abysmal. It was absolutely abysmal. The defense on the whole, you can criticize it late in the game, but he gave up 58 points. I don't care who you're playing. That's a great defensive effort. It was a great defensive effort. Dante had an awesome game defensively. He was altering shots. He blocked a couple. I thought all of that was good. But Shellstad was hitting shots earlier in the game, and they weren't able to continue to find ways to get him the ball in space. I just didn't see a lot of creativity in the offensive sets. I didn't see that many offensive sets. It was kind of wait around, just passively move the ball around the perimeter, and then, oh, hey, there's 10 seconds on the shot clock. Someone should set a screen. At the very least, I saw a pick and roll lob to N'Faly Dante, which I called for last week on the show when I did that segment about Dante, saying, man, I can't remember the last time Oregon just threw him a lob. Well, rather than trying to force the ball to him all the time, which Oregon still did on a couple of occasions, but I didn't think it was as pronounced in this game. I think Oregon just had a bad shooting day. They were like 4 of 18. It was a bad number. Let me pull it up real quick. It was a bad day for Oregon shooting threes. They were getting good looks. They were just off. They were just off, but they were good enough defensively to win the game. They were 2 for 19. Oregon State was 2 for 18. So the Ducks, I think, were just off from beyond the arc rather than stagnant offense, not letting their shooters get into a rhythm. I can live with that, but They threw a lob on a pick and roll to N'Faly Dante, created a foul a couple times. I like the way they used him much more in that particular game. So Oregon got a win over Oregon State. They play again next week at Matthew Knight Arena, but it's the Bay Area schools this week. And those are not going to be easy games. Oregon can lose one more time in the entire regular season and get an at-large bid, or else it'll be Vegas or bust. That's where things currently are at. Baseball is at a different stage in their season. They went 2-1 in Texas, wins over Baylor and Oklahoma, lost to Texas Tech, trailed that game 6-0, came back, made it a 7-6 game, couldn't quite complete the comeback, but they did have a comeback victory in Game 2 against Baylor. I'll take a 2-1 start. There's a 4-game series coming up this weekend for Mark Wasikowski's team against Lafayette. That starts on Friday, doubleheader Saturday, and then another game Sunday. The games over the weekend were on Flow Sports because it was a neutral site, a broadcast situation. The games this weekend will be on the Oregon live stream, which are free to watch, and I'll have the radio calls synced up with Joey Mack, and I think Ryan Milano's on there as well doing the broadcast. So 2-1 start, I'll take it. I mean, Oklahoma, Baylor, Texas Tech. Yeah, you lost Texas Tech pitching. Gave out a little bit. It was an 11-7 loss, but in the first 2 games, the Ducks pitching staff had an ERA of 3, and the bullpen was outstanding. They took advantage of some mistakes from their opponents, so they're going to have to be a little bit less reliant on that going forward. But if you told me before the year with those 3 games, you win 2 of them, yep, I really don't care which 2. I'll take it. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and go Ducks.